Howdy y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is A.R. Cavley. I'm going to do another quick review or quick product overview of another one of my gaming products called Into the After-Gloaming. It is a post-apocalyptic setting book for Tricube, whoops, for Tricube Tales by Zadmark Games. It's a minimalist generic game that can be used to cover any uh, genres. I've reviewed it if you want information over there, but I like the system well enough that I thought it would be good for making a an actual setting book. I've made several one-page setting books, one-page scenario books, which are basically a quick uh, rundown of the background with a like a half page redux of the rules, which is really all you really need. I mean, they're simple enough. You can use those to run the whole game. All the rules fit on one page, and then some adventure generation tables. If you look on Drive-Thru RPG, you'll find that there's a bunch of those type of settings for Tricube Tales. I thought it'd be interesting to make uh, more of a campaign setting book with some more detail into the setting. And in this case, I added some simple resource management rules because in the post apocalyptic survival setting, you don't always find everything. It's not a setting where you can expect to pop down to the local big box store and get a new tent or new batteries. You actually have to go out and explore and keep track. I'll touch on those things when I get into the book, so let's go ahead and get into the book. All right. So, into the After-Gloaming, one of the good things as a game designer is that there is a lot of free end of the world art out there that you can come across. All right, so on Drive-Thru RPG, you can find this in PDF and soft color or soft cover color interior. All right, Tricube Tales itself is you don't need to have the little rule book separately. I suggest you get it. It's very cheap and it's good to support them. But the rules, the system overview, and all of the rules are in this book. So you don't actually have to have that. The Tricube Tale rules are uh, under a license for people to be able to do that. So into the After-Gloaming assumes again, like most of the games that I prefer, assumes a gritty, realistic background. I'm not really the kind of guy who goes for a lot of gonzo type things. It's just my nature. I mean, I used to play Gamma World, and that was pretty gonzo. And I had fun playing it, but now as I'm a grumpy old man yelling at kids to get off my lawn, no mutant, sentient beefsteak tomatoes, please. Um, however, however, uh, because I understand that one Tricube Tales, the system in general, is really designed to handle a bunch of different genres, even within the post-apocalyptic genre or subgenres of it. I've Paint Your Apocalypse talks about the different types of post-apocalyptic scenarios you might run. Gritty realism is the one that I prefer, but um, mutant plague, cosmic horror, with a breakdown of the type of characters you would have and some of the inspirations that you might come across. Magical Mayhem, and I do have Gonzo World as well. But as it's noted here in the character creation, the rules and the setting information are going to assume a gritty, realistic kind of survival mode. You know, we're talking like The Road or Mad Max. You know, the bad guys are people. The bad guys are desperate people looking to survive. This is a breakdown. These character creation rules and the game rules. This is all Tricube Tales. Okay, a lot of this is straight from, like I said, licensed, but straight from the Tricube Tales books. One product that Tricube Tales makes is something called their solo rules, and it's excellent to have for any campaign. Even if you're not using solo rules, it's full of tables for NPC reactions, encounters, things like that. So I suggest getting it. I suggest getting it even if you're not using it for a solo game. One of the things I incorporated from various solo systems that I've had is this, you know, the Oracle, the yes/no question. Tricube Tales is player facing, so the GM in the base rules makes no rolls. It's always the PC is rolling. But if it's a random, you know, if the GM needs to know something, which way an NPC might jump, if things are going to get bad, there's a little discussion about using the yes, no, maybe. Archetype and traits. Anyone familiar with the Tricube system knows how the system works. The rules are very simple. It's a die pool, 1 to 3 dice. One aspect, like I mentioned, was the item condition and item tracking. The idea of having players keep track of resources is not meant to be a burden on the game, but to force difficult choices. It lists how many items that you can carry, a very simple encumbrance system based on what you have to carry it. You know, if you have a large pack, or do you just have a purse or your pockets? Equipment comes with how many slots it takes up. But when you come across and you're scavenging, do you give up some of the food? Do you give up those spare parts so that you can pick up the first aid kit that you just found, or the box of ammo? That's really the point of resource management in a scarcity campaign, like this post-apocalyptic campaign is. Of course, it's optional. It is absolutely fine to just keep all that stuff in the narrative. But I thought it would be helpful to put a simple a set of rules for it. Items you find have different conditions, and that's something else that comes in play, is not only the finding the items, but the conditions, being able to repair them. Okay. Some rules on survival. If you are not able to provide water or carry water or find water or food, some simple rules on how to deal with that. Combat, the same thing as with the Tricube Tales. Okay, very simple. Count your successes and then roll to defend against the attacks. I added a small list of vehicles, you know, your typical kind of post-apocalyptic vehicles, dirt bikes, buggies, you know, beat up old cargo trucks, things like that. including some perks and quirks of those in accordance with the Tricube Tails vehicle design, the simple vehicle design. And starting here, this is a day in the life, how things happened, you know, how people live now. The gist is that 22 years ago, a virus called the IRAV, or immune response alteration virus, started the collapse of things. It actually had a high mortality rate, and as it started taking people, industry started collapsing, rule of law was lost, some wars started, and basically just ended up, wrecking everything. This talks about the different types of communities that have formed, different types of survival groups that have formed since that time. Talks a little bit about exploring cities, and because 22 years, if you look at any place that's been abandoned for 22 years, it gets overgrown and unsafe pretty quickly. And that actually adds some interesting challenges to people who are starting to scavenge. That's one of the other underlying precepts, is that after 22 years, all the canned goods in the box mart in the groceries are gone. They're starting to spoil. Medicines are starting to running out of medicines, starting to not be able to find them. The ones that you do find are starting to be more and more spoiled. So these communities are having to learn how to develop, how to survive. And of course, they're mostly living on 19th century technology with some M16s thrown in there. Discussion of the different type of settlement governments that you might come across. I have detailed no specific settlements along those lines. There are a couple of groups that I've detailed at the end. I'll talk about those. I've not created any maps because the one thing about a post-apocalyptic campaign like this is you can just look up on Google Maps. You can make your own map. You can pull it up. When I first started gaming, if you could get a cool fold-out map of the United States, or like a gazetteer, road maps, whatever, they were good there to go find one, but you had to go find one. We hopped on our bikes and our buses to to go get those. But nowadays you can just pull a map up off of Google, and there are a lot of random map generators that you can use that will create all sorts of maps. But using Google will give you real world map information. So that's pretty cool. Now, like I said, I have not supplied any specific settlements, but here are tables to generate settlements for you. You use it. It's assumed that most characters will have a home settlement. Okay. Here's a list of what a rural settlement is likely to be, and urban settlements are likely to be. Here's a table for what kind of government it has. And whenever here's a name generator. It's got prefixes and suffixes. You can roll them and mix and match them. You've got North Tree, or Red Ruins, Death Island, whatever. You can come up with some pretty interesting ones. Because even if your Google map shows something, like being, Bellevue or whatever, a settlement that has formed in the ruins of Bellevue will have its own little name. General attitude towards outsiders, and within each one of those settlements, here's a table to come up with a couple of interesting sites within that place. Because something else to keep in mind is that most of these settlements are interested in survival. So they're going to use what they have to survive. Some of them have started trading, but everyone's definitely in survival mode. And you come up with a couple of interesting locations that are important to the town, important to the settlement. Here's a settlement resources table. And each one of these has, they're in steps, so you can generate your table. These are, or generate your community. Each one of these, these are settlement resources that are rare, or at least valuable. And here's one for the problems or activities. Some of them are bad, some of them are just things that they're trying to do. Maybe they're trying to expand farmland or whatever. Here's some simple rules for exploration and traveling. A random encounter table. Some scavenging rules. Here's a scavenging table based on how well your scavenging roll was. There are a lot of products out there that will give a list of random items that you can find. Now most of them are pointless, and so I did not include anything that would be pointless. It's garbage. It's trash. So there's no point in making a table of it, because no one's going to take home, D6 pair of rotted underwear. And the campaign setting is not one of those where the primitive survivors worship the old ones. People still remember what happened. It was a bunch of dumbasses that destroyed the world. So most of the items that you find, one, they take up space, and two, they're useful. If you fail your scavenging roll, then that's when you find your moldy underwear that nobody wants. All right. Dangers in the After-Gloaming. Okay. These are basically challenges as to typical Tricube tales. A short description of the type of danger might be, you've got raiders and gangers, merchants. Now, merchant may not be a threat, but that's, it's included here. It gives you a difficulty to fight it, what type of reaction that they're likely to do upon meeting them, how they're likely to react, and the type of gear they might have. Just suggestions for gear and tactics. And of course, number of effort tokens to defeat them. So there's dangerous people, dangerous animals. There are no mutants in the default setting, but the animals that you come across are more savage because they're wild. They're not scared of people, and the ones that did survive are the bigger, badder people, right? Without the human management of things, survival of the fittest is back in full play. And these are your typical animal threats that you might find. The same kind of thing you might find just going hiking. Boars, cougars. One of the big things that I think will be a big problem in such a situation are feral dogs. Like I note here, there's 70 million pet dogs in the U.S. And when things collapse and people can't take care of their dogs, you can even see in modern disaster areas where these packs of dogs start getting together, and they're very dangerous. And a dog can maul a person. You get a pack of those. It's not quite as sexy as a giant mutant rattlesnake, but you get yourself torn apart by a pack of leftover Rottweilers or something. That'll be bad for you. And then finally, dangerous diseases and conditions. In a setting where medicine is becoming more and more rare and medical knowledge is fading away, the diseases are going to be very important. They're very dangerous. You know, even just those infected wounds. And I wanted to try to incorporate some of that by including some of those bad Oregon Trail type diseases that can kill you. All right, the IRAV, which is what kicked everything off in the campaign, it in of itself doesn't do anything, but if you get anything else, if you're exposed to anything else, mechanically what it does, it only allows you 1d6 resistance for any illness or poison tests to resist them. It doesn't matter what your attributes are. If you have IRAV, it's incurable, and once you get it from then on out, 1d6 is all you get for your resistance rolls. And so when you get something like leprosy 2, or you get exposed to a bad flu, or if you decided to dysentery, then you know it becomes very deadly for you, and that's kind of what ended up happening, especially in a situation in a campaign where sanitation is in these systems that we use to ostensibly keep food safe aren't in play. All right, and then here are some other burns, traps, falling, some other kind of damages that you can take. Basic campaign stuff. Here, in the survival groups in the After-Gloaming, I did come up with a list of groups that you can drop anywhere, right? Wherever you're holding your campaign, whether if you're holding it in Phoenix or Washington or Massachusetts, whatever. I generated, how many are there? One, two, I don't know, I guess about 10 maybe. Survivor groups that you can put in there and introduce slowly. And what's included is a short history, like the Aftermath Express. They're kind of a bunch of truckers that survived by evading all the bad things, the hordes of refugees, everything, and now they've managed to come back, and they act as a kind of a transportation company. Some gangs, some religious groups. There's a militia, and it describes a little bit of what their home base looks like, how they operate, and the leaders of there. And there's enough there to get some hooks, get some adventure hooks, and use them as long-term contacts, enemies, factions in there. Okay. And that's that. Into the After-Gloaming. I had fun playing with this one. I like the Tricube Tales as a minimalist system. It's pretty versatile. And in fact, I'm currently working on a sci-fi campaign setting for Tricube Tales. But when I finish that, we'll talk about that. So that is the product information about Into the After-Gloaming. I've kind of was on a post-apocalyptic kick lately. It's a very interesting genre because it's really about survival, survival in harsh times. But if you want to check it out, all the links are down there. They're affiliate links, so I can get a little extra bit if you click on them. Doesn't cost you anything. You don't see anything, and hope you check it out. Happy gaming.